Welcome back to our channel, where we uncover the thrilling world of movies. Today, we're about to give you a quick recap of the adrenaline-fueled, heart-pounding, horror comedy rollercoaster that will keep you on the edge of your seat. And that is Ready or Not. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and leave a like to our channel. So let's begin, whether you are ready or not.
Jesus.
In 1989, inside the Le Damas mansion, two siblings, Daniel and Alex, are being pursued by a man named Charles. Daniel manages to hide Alex in a closet and confronts Charles, who is married to their Aunt Helene. Charles pleads for Daniel's help, revealing that he has been injured and is being hunted. However, instead of assisting him, Daniel alerts the rest of the family, leading to a grim fate for Charles. Fast forward 30 years, Alex is getting married to Grace. Grace is both nervous and excited about joining Alex's affluent family, who obtained their wealth through a gaming empire known as Dominion. Before the ceremony, the couple participates in a photo shoot alongside other family members. Daniel is accompanied by his opportunistic wife, Charity, who openly admits to marrying him for his family's money. Their father, Tony, disapproves of Grace, although not as intensely as Helene, who casts a menacing glare in her direction. On the other hand, Alex and Daniel's mother, Becky, expresses her approval and assures Grace that only Alex's opinion matters. Shortly after, everyone gathers for the wedding ceremony, and Grace and Alex exchange vows. Later, as Grace and Alex attempt to be intimate, they are interrupted by Helene, reminding Alex of his family obligation. Alex explains to Grace that, as per tradition in the Le Damas family, she must participate in a game at midnight, involving every new addition to the family. Grace and Alex reunite with their family, who are now accompanied by Alex's sister Emily, a cocaine addict, and her husband Fitch Bradley, along with their sons Georgie and Gabe. The family gathers around a table while one of the maids, Clara, reads a bedtime story to the boys. Tony, Grace's father-in-law, explains the origin of a peculiar family tradition. It all began with Victor, Grace's great-grandfather, who struck a deal with a mysterious benefactor named Mr. LaBelle. In exchange for wealth and a special box, Victor had to fulfill his part of the bargain. Passing the box to Grace, the family expects her to draw a card that will determine the game they will play. Charity reveals she picked chess, while Fitch got Old Maid. Grace's card reveals hide and seek, causing a hushed silence to fall over the room. Tony informs Grace that she must hide until dawn to win the game, an unappealing prospect for her. As she prepares to hide, the family arms themselves with guns, except for Helene and Fitch, who opt for an axe and a crossbow, respectively. Grace finds refuge in a dumbwaiter, while Alex chooses not to participate. As the family disperses to search for Grace, Alex decides to warn her, unbeknownst to the rest of the family. Charity discovers Alex's intentions. Grace cautiously emerges from the dumbwaiter, and just as she does, Alex finds her and covers her mouth, urging her to remain silent. Meanwhile, Clara is on the lookout for Georgie, who has wandered off. Suddenly, a gunshot shatters the air, causing Clara's face to be blown off. Emily mistakenly shot Clara, believing her to be Grace, but quickly realizes her error. Tony, Helene, Daniel, and Becky rush in to help dispose of Clara's body, leaving Grace in a state of horrified shock. Alex takes her to another room to reveal the grim truth. In the twisted game of hide and seek, the Le Damases believe they must hunt down and kill Grace before dawn, or they will face their own demise. Alex confesses that he concealed this information out of fear that Grace would leave him, but he promises to find a way to ensure her safe escape. Grace exchanged her high heels for a pair of tennis shoes and tore off the lower part of her dress to enhance her mobility. As she made her way towards the exit, her presence was immediately noticed by Tony, Helene, and Daniel. Desperate to subdue her, they made their move, but Emily, fueled by the effects of cocaine, began shooting wildly at Grace, missing her target. Seizing the opportunity, Grace sprinted away, and the others realized that she had discovered the truth. Although Daniel stumbled upon her later, his indifference towards the pursuit led him to grant Grace a head start before alerting the rest of the family. In their collective effort to devise a new plan, the family gathered together. However, their discussion was interrupted by Tina, another maid, who rushed in to inform Tony of her sighting of Grace. In a tragic accident, Emily, armed with Fitch's crossbow, unintentionally shot an arrow through Tina's head. Hearing Tina's agonizing groans, Helene swiftly decapitated her to end her suffering. Helene then proposed using the cameras to track down Grace, but Tony objected, citing a deviation from their customary practices. Meanwhile, Grace discovered a rifle and ammunition, which she promptly loaded. Taking cover in the kitchen, she observed as Alex attempted to activate the cameras and disable the locks on the doors and windows. Stevens, the butler, entered the kitchen to prepare tea and overheard Grace as she prepared to shoot. To her surprise, he revealed that the ammunition was merely for display. Undeterred, Grace smashed a teapot against his face and managed to evade him. Alex succeeded in unlocking the doors and windows, enabling Grace to escape outside. Inside, Tony and Daniel discovered Alex in the control room, prompting Tony to launch an attack. Engaging in a struggle, Alex fought back but was ultimately convinced to stand down by Daniel. Seizing the opportunity, Tony incapacitated Alex. To prevent him from aiding Grace, they restrained Alex with handcuffs in his bedroom. Grace was on the verge of leaving the house when she was unexpectedly discovered by Dora, the third maid, who had been hiding in the dumbwaiter. Dora's attempt to alert the family about Grace's presence backfires as she accidentally closes the dumbwaiter, resulting in her own tragic demise. Seizing the opportunity, Grace escapes once more. Meanwhile, Grace found herself on the roof, where she overheard a conversation between Tony and Helene. They acknowledged Alex's long-standing rejection of their tradition, considering him the good son. However, Helene believed that Alex would eventually embrace his role in the family, just as she had after Charles was killed. Initially resistant, she eventually realized that she should have taken Charles's life herself. Helene anticipated that Alex would eventually succumb to his family's legacy. Outside, Grace seeks refuge in the stable, hoping for assistance from Georgie. However, to her shock, Georgie points a gun at her and fires, injuring her hand. In a swift act of self-defense, Grace retaliates by punching him, rendering him unconscious. Startled by a wandering goat, Grace stumbles and falls into the goat pit, a grim sight where deceased goats and ill-fated family members are discarded. Struggling to ascend, Grace faces the crumbling ladder beneath her feet. Despite the challenges, she manages to reach the top, but not without a nail piercing the wound in her hand. Summoning her inner strength, Grace pulls herself out of the pit and employs a torn section of her dress as a makeshift bandage. Determined, she resumes her escape, breaking through the front gate. Desperate for help, she tries to flag down a passing individual, but their callous response leads to their immediate departure. Shortly thereafter, Stevens discovers Grace's whereabouts and makes an attempt to capture her. Engaging in a fierce altercation, Grace fights back and endeavors to strangle Stevens using a piece of her dress. In a daring move, she seizes control of his car but remains unaware that he is still alive. Meanwhile, under Becky's orders, Daniel and Emily are tasked with disposing of the maids in the goat pit due to the perception that they have been hindering the hunt more than aiding it. While Daniel has grown disillusioned with the family, Emily insists on adhering to the family's traditions to protect her sons from harm. As Grace escapes in Stevens's car, she contacts a customer service agent named Justin for assistance. Unfortunately, Justin informs her that the car has already been reported stolen and proceeds to remotely disable it. This turn of events plays into Stevens's favor as he locates Grace and sedates her. Driving back toward the mansion, he video chats with the family to inform them of his success in capturing Grace. Oblivious to Grace's reawakening, he plays classical music over the radio. However, the family, witnessing Grace's revival, attempts to warn Stevens to no avail. Seizing the moment, Grace strikes him twice in the head, causing the car to veer off into a nearby field. While Stevens perishes in the accident, Grace miraculously survives. As she emerges from the wreckage, she is encountered by Daniel, who feels compelled to uphold his loyalty to the family. In an act of conflicting emotions, he knocks Grace unconscious and escorts her back to the mansion. Becky enters Alex's room, determined to have a conversation with him. Despite acknowledging Alex's love for Grace, Becky believes he will ultimately succumb to his family's desires. Alex issues a grave threat, warning Becky that he will harm her if anything befalls Grace. In a chilling ceremony, the family places Grace on an altar, preparing to sacrifice her to Mr. LaBelle. As they partake in a ritualistic drink from a chalice, they suddenly begin violently vomiting. Unbeknownst to them, Daniel had given them something to induce sickness. Seizing the opportunity, Daniel frees Grace from the altar and attempts to help her escape. However, their plans are interrupted when Charity discovers them. Realizing Daniel's betrayal, she shoots him in the throat. A fierce struggle ensues between Grace and Charity, resulting in Grace disarming Charity. However, the gun is empty, so Grace subdues Charity by striking her with the pistol. Despite her desire to aid Daniel, he urges Grace to flee. Alex manages to break free from his restraints and discovers Daniel mortally wounded. Desperate to save his brother, Alex's efforts prove futile. In the meantime, Tony sets his sights on Grace, intending to kill her personally. Grace fights back, striking Tony with a lantern, inadvertently igniting the curtains and causing a fire to erupt. Becky arrives on the scene, missing her arrow shot but then attempting to strangle Grace. In a desperate move, Grace pulls down the tablecloth, seizes Mr. LaBelle's box, and uses it to bludgeon Becky to death before freeing herself. Coming across the gruesome scene, Alex approaches Grace, hoping to reason with her. However, he realizes that she will never stay with him and betrays her, surrendering her to his family. The family members proceed with the ritual, restraining Grace themselves. As Alex prepares to plunge the dagger into his wife, Grace manages to break free from Helene's grip by clawing at her hand, causing the dagger to impale her own shoulder. Defiantly, Grace rises from the table, holding the dagger and screaming at the family. As they recoil in horror, they notice that the sun has risen, signaling their missed opportunity for the ritual's success. Momentarily paralyzed by their impending doom, the family witnesses a shocking turn of events. Helene, attempting to kill Grace nonetheless, suddenly explodes in a grotesque display of blood and gore. One by one, Fitch, Charity, Emily, Georgie, and Gabe meet the same fate. Tony, the only one remaining, protests about following the rules, but he too turns into a bloody mess. Alex, seeking Grace's forgiveness, meets his demise with a final explosion as well. The fire from the engulfed curtains spreads throughout the house. In a brief moment, Grace catches a glimpse of Mr. LaBelle's spirit seated in his chair, nodding approvingly at her. Emerging from the burning mansion, Grace, now covered in blood, sits on the steps and lights a cigarette. Just as the police and paramedics arrive, an officer demands an explanation for the chaos. Grace simply replies, "In-laws," summarizing the horrific ordeal she has endured. And that's the end of the story. I hope you liked it. Comment down below what movies do you like us to recap next. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.